So welcome everybody. My name is Dan Kerr, and on behalf of All Souls Historical Church in Stony Brook Village, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's second Saturday's poetry reading. One of the good things that came out of the pandemic, I know that's a bit of a stretch to think of good things that come out of the pandemic, but our poets have taken the advice of Mahatma Gandhi in that they've behaved their way into a new way of thinking. So everyone actually does show up, and we actually do start on time, which marks contrast where we used to meet in the church and we'd start 11 o'clock and the only person that would be there would be me. And the featured poet usually come at about 11:10 or 11:15. So it's good to see that everyone is on time. We appreciate that. If you want to read, be part of the open read, we're very inclusive here. Just put your name in chat and we'll call upon you in the order that your name appears in chat. Please keep your microphone muted until you are called upon, so we don't get a background noise. I have muted my own phone, so my cell phone won't ring again, hopefully. Feedback is a gift. So if you have feedback in terms of today's program, good feedback or a way that the program could be improved, that's my email there, danielbkerr@verizon.net. Feedback is a gift. We do review all the feedback after each reading with both Barbara, our poet laureate, and Kathy, who is the one who lines up the poets. So our planned agenda is today, we start at 11 o'clock, right on time. After I get you all set up, Barbara will do a brief introduction. She generally reads a poem from a chat book as well. Our featured, we're very excited and happy to have Susan Dingle today. So Susan is our featured reader. Then we'll do the open read, and then we'll call Susan back for an encore. And then Barbara will close the program and also will announce who the next featured reading is going to be in June. Again, we do this, it's always the second Saturday of the month. So the next one would be on June 12th, those of you who like to plan ahead. So I recognize that you're here for poetry, not for evangelization, but I will tell you that this is one of the outreach programs of All Souls Church in Stony Brook Village. All Souls is probably, we've got about 100 people that are members of the congregation, if you include little babies and people in nursing home, but we've got a relationship with over 700 people in our community who we invite to our events. So we're there for the community in a number of ways. I'll start in the upper left-hand corner there. We collect food every day. There are hungry in this area. They tend to be invisible. We collect food every day. We take it to St. Gerard Mejia in Terryville. Going down lower left-hand corner there, in normal times, we do concerts. Saturdays at 6 concerts. We've suspended those as a result of COVID. We have to bring those back soon. We also do, along the bottom there, we do Gregorian Chant once a month in the church as well. You come into the church, it's mystically lit. The beautiful sounds of Gregorian Chant and the music at Taizé. We're very proud of our relationship with the poets. So we've been hosting these poetry series for a couple of years now, probably 4 or 5 years now almost. And you see those two beautiful people there. That is Robert Savino handing the ceremonial passing of the twig to Barbara Southard when Barbara became our poet laureate. Another thing we do, finishing off the bottom there, is we do an interdenominational rosary. Actually, we do that every Wednesday at noon. People think only Roman Catholics say the rosary. That's not true. We other people, Buddhists, Native Americans, Protestants, all sorts of people do the rosaries. And what we've done is we've integrated the Greek Orthodox, the Roman Catholic, and the Anglican version of the rosary. We do that once a week. Upper right-hand corner there, we also do an interdenominational prayer service every Tuesday morning. The woman you see standing on the left is Reverend Kate Cologne from the Setauket Presbyterian Church. We've had a Roman Catholic priest in, we've had a Greek Orthodox priest in, we've had someone from the Pentecostal Church. Also very proud that we'll have Rabbi Adam Fisher will be with us at that morning prayer service on June 29th as well. So we do that. We also do Native American drumming once a month. Native American drumming comes out of the indigenous people's experience, spiritual healing. The drummer plays the various drums, people meditate and reflect on it. And then also once a year, we're trying to make our historical church handicapped accessible. We do a 5K run and 2K walk, which is called Souls for All Souls. As a result of that effort and other things that we've done, we've now raised almost $50,000 to make the church handicapped accessible and put a bathroom in the church. So it's on behalf of All Souls, welcome. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our poet laureate, Barbara. So Barbara, if you could, once you turn on your mic, I will clear the screen and turn off my mic. Barbara, over to you.
There you are. Wonderful to see all of you. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today because I have something special to tell you. You have to make sure to come to second Saturdays next month because we are going to be handing over the twig to the new Suffolk County Poet Laureate. So I don't want you to miss that at all. I'm very excited about it. Now I'm going to read. Now, normally I announce who is coming next month, but I found this wonderful book called On Maxwell Street, and that's by Kate Kelly, and she will be coming next month. And I love this poem, so I'll give you a preview of what you'll hear from Kate next month. All right. Jackson's reply to the critic. Why don't you paint my paintings? If you've got burnt sienna in the vein, know like your mother's breath, my brush and stroke can, with my father's stern grip in mind, rouse the flush in my flesh, the itch of memory, crawl through cerulean blue as she oozes across the horizon. There in the eddying tide, face a blank stretch of nothing and rage with hand and eye. Go on and dare dance the self beyond gravity's clutch. Let go the everything. Save, drip and sweep and dash against the light, hurl and swirl and prance the strut, jump whirling, piss in the fire of nonsense. And when the storm passes, wake alone on chill ground in the arms of a painter's dream deferred. So the picture misses. How could you know what blue you were after? Ah, fool, did you think the impregnable language of beauty yours for the taking? I just love that poem. It's about Jackson Pollock. That is just wonderful. And that's by Kate Kelly. And now I'm going to have the special pleasure of introducing Susan Dingle. Susan is a graduate of the Writers Program of the University of Illinois at Chicago, has been published in small presses and little magazines since 1970. She was a co-founder of Poetry Street in 2014 with Robert Booby Brown, a reading series that continues on Zoom on the last Saturday of the month as Poetry Street on the Road. It's wonderful to see if you tune into that. Now in its 8th year. With Maggie Bloomfield, she wrote and performed Breakout, their two-woman show of poetry at Southampton Cultural Arts Center for a sold-out crowd in 2016. In 2017, the team was invited to perform Breakout at the East End Fringe Festival in Riverhead. In 2020, Susan had 2 chapbooks published, Parting Gifts, honorable mention in the 2019 National Poetry Month chapbook competition published by local Gems Press, and in Pilgrim Drag, Finishing Line Press, both available for purchase through Susan's website. Susan moved from New York to Washington State in 2020, where she has started a private practice as a therapist and reconfigured her website as a source for suicide prevention and mental health awareness. Most recently, she's presented a workshop based on poems from her new collection, Hospice Travelogue, for the bereavement program at East End Hospice in West Hampton Beach. Please welcome Susan Dingle.
Thank you, Barbara. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I want to thank Kathy and of course Dan for inviting me to read here on Zoom. in the spirit of All Souls, which is such a beautiful, beautiful church in Stony Brook that has been the source of so many amazing ministries throughout the years. So thank you for making this possible. I always like to begin my reading with a land acknowledgement and a moment of silence for the indigenous peoples upon whose land we stand, the Shinnecock on the east end of Long Island, and here in the Pacific Northwest, the Cowlick people, for the elders and ancestors of Native peoples, and also mindful today of the people of India, and that they may be relief and healing, that those who mourn may be comforted, and that those in the Indian diaspora may have good news about their families at home. Thank you. I'm going to start with a poem that Kathy asked me to read, and I'm dedicating this poem to Bill Batcher and all the fans of Montauk. What I've never told anyone about this poem is that I wrote it in a workshop with Billy Collins, and Billy Collins did not despise this poem. It's called How to Get to Montauk from the North Fork. There isn't a ferry from Orient to Montauk. A straight line isn't always the shortest distance between 2 points when there is an ocean between them and the risk of current and tide taking you out to sea. So instead, take the long way from the North Fork, beginning at 114 in Greenport, crossing on the North Ferry, careful not to wander on Shelter Island when 114 disappears behind a curve. Do not swerve, though you may be tempted never to return. Recall your goal. 114 to South Ferry, then over the bridge, snake through Sag Harbor, then thank God left on 27, ignore East Hampton and Amagansett, full speed ahead until trees fade and bushes appear from nowhere and you feel the ocean coming near. Or from the North Fork, you could drive west to Riverhead, take 27 east and pray. You might reach Montauk in an hour and a half or 5 hours later, depending on the season. Some will fly to LA quicker than others drive to Montauk at the height of the season when, if you live on the North Fork, you would never think of going. That is the benefit of winter on the North Fork. You can go to Montauk faster. Maybe the beaches aren't that great, but the ocean is crazy, and you don't need a permit to park. Visual applause is so weird, isn't it? But thank you. So I moved from there to here in November 2020, a place called the Pacific Northwest. I call it my wilderness adventure because when you are my age and you move from one coast to the other in the middle of a pandemic by yourself, girl, you get to call that a wilderness adventure. My son and his family invited me, and the Lord has given me a new life, whether I like it or not. Spoiler alert, I do like it. Even though I often feel, well, like a New Yorker in the Pacific Northwest. This is witness protection. I seek witness protection. A New Yorker pleated into the Pacific Northwest by a GPS in this car disguised by Washington plates. I am afraid of waterfalls, the great outdoors. On the hillside, blackberry brambles swarm beneath power lines strung between scaffoldings down to the river, where some crazy mist rises up between the mountains like something from a movie about Switzerland. What is this? I find the New York Times, but no bagels. artisan cream cheese, and real salmon, roses at Safeway, tulips at Costco, and in Ridgefield at the Wildlife Refuge, 10,000 swans. And I want to thank my friends from the Pacific Northwest who are here today, because we're here at 8 o'clock in the morning, people. Okay, so that's really pretty awesome. You know, I did learn that grief travels. Now, I'm promising you I'm not going to regale you with a series of poems about grief, although, as Barbara mentioned, I do have a collection called Hospice Travelogue, which is currently making the rounds. I love to pretend there are rules for things there are no rules for. This is the Etiquette of Grief from Hospice Travelogue, which was just published in the newsletter of my new church, Cascades Presbyterian Church. This is the Etiquette of Grief. The Etiquette of Grief. Grief is a prickly bouquet, all thorns and thistles. But when it appears, it expects to be welcomed like an honored guest. If you don't accept it, you will see how it bristles as if irritated by how rude you are. Now your arms are bleeding as the thorns and thistles burrow in. Be sure to say, "Thank you, grief, for being here," even though you don't mean it and wish it would go away. If rejected, grief will exact revenge, haunt you until you feel like half of a lemon rind squeezed inside out in a yellow plastic squeezer. During an attack, you may feel too numb to move and sit there staring into space, falling and floating at the same time with no place to go except that trajectory across the stratosphere you can't imagine. Always be polite to grief, otherwise it can kill you. Who, me? Says grief, stung by the accusation. Grief is never not listening, especially when you think it can't possibly. Be polite to grief. It lives inside you and can eat you alive. I learned about just being with grief. This is talking back to grief. And I begin it with a quote from Psalm 30, verse 11. "For you have turned my sorrow into dancing." Talking back to grief. So what, grief? My God is bigger than you. Even when the whole house is filled with photographs of happy times and memorabilia piled to the ceiling, I try not to notice. Oh, grief, even at night, my God is bigger than you and never goes away. Oh, grief, even at night, my God is awesome and will turn you into dancing. Oh, Lord, in my sorrow, I will sing. Hallelujah, anyhow. Then, of course, came the pandemic. By Memorial Day 2020, the New York Times published that cover commemorating 100,000 dead from COVID. And I wrote a poem about unimaginable loss. I want to read this poem today, and I want to dedicate it to Pramila with thanks and a prayer that her family in India is healthy and safe. This is Stir Crazy, a portrait of America in protest. It's in 5 parts. 1. The New York Sunday Times lists 1,000 names on the front page. The president plays golf And I remember Gil Scott Heron's line, "A rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. What goes around comes around." Sunday evening of the day the president orders the churches to open, CBS screens Titanic in prime time. The ship whose captain said, "In fact, we're heating up the last boilers now," while passengers whisper everything he knows is wrong. I am that white girl at the prow with arms like wings. Today, I will visit our veterans. I cut stems of peony, rhododendron, lily of the valley, drive alone to the cemetery on the main road behind my grandmother's church, past generations who died before I was born, to the plain stones, my father and mother side by side. I place the flowers there, the front page of the newspaper between their stones. A breeze rustles the first page, lifts up the columns of the names of family members lost to COVID. 2. Last night in Minneapolis, grief broke out in fires and shattered glass. Last night in fires, grief broke out and glass shattered Minneapolis. Last night in grief, glass broke out and Minneapolis shattered fire. I am the sole survivor, holding on to the broken door, my wet hair frozen, signaling the rescue boat that searches the dark by lantern light in the sea where so many are silenced, frozen, white, float in the COVID sea, pandemic shipwreck, where white police still shoot down unarmed Black men and kill them for no reason. A small world we are grieving in Minneapolis as the great ship splits asunder, breaking amidship, the bow upended, going down. 3. The survivors in the rescue boats are picked up by the Carpathian, whose captain turns out to have been the grandfather of my mother's friend, who lived down the street and later died of AIDS. Not that anyone knew he was gay. Small world, such a small world, where we wear masks and remember martyrs gunned down for no reason. George Floyd in Minneapolis, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, those whose names are said in protests wherever masks are worn and Black lives matter. 4. And as if all that shit wasn't enough, a rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. I drink coffee to calm down. After praying makes my heart race and tears fall. Prayer warriors cry hallelujah anyhow. Wounded healers, even in the pandemic. First responders whose protests bring life to the broken, hope to the forsaken, pity for the captain who says, in fact, we're heating up the last boilers now. As the iceberg strikes and his white bone china cup and saucer rattle slightly, he sips his tea as captains do, not knowing what we know. 5. Years from now, this social justice pandemic Armageddon will look like a shipwreck on the sea floor. And we say, yes, we knew, we saw when it went down. No, thank you. Thank you. So, gosh, I'm a hard act to follow at this point. What was that? Anyway, I would like to read, as a change of pace, I'd like to read a poem from Parting Gifts that I just decided to read because I think we need to hear this title right now. This is called Waiting in the Parking Lot to Pick Up Pizza at the Edge of the Abyss. There are dark holes in space the size of the sun, and this might be one of them. What will I do when the pizza is ready? I will sing a lullaby and offer it up as sacrifice. But our God wishes no sacrifice, only that we give thanks, even here on the edge of the abyss, where next week I may be planning a funeral. There is something so autonomic about ordering pizza during an apocalypse, something that quickens the soul to want wild mushroom, spinach, and artichoke. Also grandma's, especially that which is stone oven baked by an Italian from Brooklyn. Symmetry, isn't it? The edge of the universe calls out for some small sign that what we love is still alive. So then, what a year to have 2 chapbooks published where there are no book launchings, no one's buying books, nothing is happening, but there you go. I mean, I don't question God. So In Pilgrim Drag was my second chapbook that was published in October during the pandemic by Finishing Line Press, and you can buy it from www.finishinglinepress.com. A few years ago, I made a pilgrimage to Provincetown, Massachusetts, for a ceremony at the Universalist Church there, commemorating those who died of AIDS. We wrote their names on long ribbon streamers, which were then stretched across the stage like a forest of ribbons. Here's the title poem, In Pilgrim Drag. In Pilgrim Drag. Ribbons in rainbow colors strung between trees, handwritten messages for those who died of AIDS. Now raised up above the stage, a shimmery festoon for a tall drag queen in towering silver crown and gloves who gestures a sign of peace. As a town crier in pilgrim drag belts out, I know a land where dreams are born. In counterpoint to her, someday I'll wish upon a star. Heroes of the culture war wear drag to victory, though transgender soldiers are prohibited from service. We stand together, disenfranchised, Muslims, children of the undocumented, those whose taxes rise as their health care diminishes, Black people disproportionately slain by police, people of color with whom we mark these festivities of grief. So the biggest surprise for me in Pilgrim Drag was a poem that turned out to be prophetic and kind of brings us back to where we started in this new place. This is a poem called Googling Zion, and it begins with a quote from Psalm 137, verse 1. By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. Googling Zion. This is for my son, Jake. While we are driving, you ask what Zion means, this name so common out here, a church, a town, a bowling alley, where redwoods pierce the sky on the mountain across from Mount Hood in the Pacific Northwest, where you live. Your son in the back seat listening as we drive to his ball game. And I promise I will Google it, but I forget. Until this morning on the East End by the Peconic Bay, I Google Zion, a small hill mountain in Jerusalem where the Ark of the Covenant was placed, the hill of Jerusalem on which the city of David was built, God's dwelling place. If only the history of Zion were that simple. Although at the Mount Zion bowling alley in southern Washington, it is easy to rent shoes and bowl a frame or two where the Ark of the Covenant is placed. So if you want to find it, you have to go there. Whether the blessed covenant dwells sacred and apart, yet always with you, Zion. And 2 generations watch from behind home plate, the mound where your son stands to pitch for the first time. Thank you all. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Susan. That was just incredible. I mean, you grabbed us emotionally, you grabbed us visually, the etiquette of grief, I have a new appreciation of the Psalms, going from grief to dancing, the beautiful poem about the pandemic, the joy of ordering a pizza in Pilgrim's Drag, back to Zion, just incredible. Thank you so much. And I'm sure Barbara will add her reflections at the end as well. Just again, thank you. Okay, so we're going to switch over now to the open read, and we're going to, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Right now, there are 12 people that have asked to read, and I will call upon you in the order that you signed up. And if we missed anybody, we'll make sure that you're included. So don't panic if you wrote your name in. There was a lot of activity in chat and I missed it. We'll make sure everyone is included. So the first set of 3, and be prepared when you're called, please, to turn on your mic. The first set of 3 will be Linda Dickman, Barbara Bianca, and Bruce, in that order. Okay, so we'll start with Linda. Linda, over to you.
Thank you so much. And Susan, I am absolutely positively sure that Bellingham, Washington is the epicenter of poetry. I have never, ever experienced so many poets by reaching out my arm in Bellingham. The poetry walk at the library, you have got to go. Okay, I'll be quiet now and read.
Yeah, very much you do.
Okay, this is called Time Traveler. She'd seen the film. She'd married the hero again and again. Traveling back to their island shore, the scent of plumeria blending with the salt and pine. We stood in a little chapel. It was just big enough for a family. There on the guided tour of the Polynesian village, we stood riveted to 2 plaques. We inquired. The translation of that scripture constricted my throat. I knew. I'd heard it before, again and again. I was the Wahine, converted by the missionaries. You were the ship's captain that married me and took me away. I sent this message in a bottle to let you know I would wait for you forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Very moving. Over to Barbara.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
You're doing fine.
And Susan, that was marvelous. And thank you, Dan and Kathy. Tomorrow's Mother's Day, and this is the first Mother's Day I'm without my own mom, Rosalie, who died last year, right after Mother's Day at 94. This is to the mothers who are joyous, to the mothers who are glad, to the mothers who are healers, to the mothers who are sad, to the mothers in quarantine, to the mothers who refuse, to the mothers who cure the sick, knowing some they're gonna lose, to the mothers in their 90s, to the mothers in their teens, to the mothers full of passion, to the mothers full of beans, To the mothers who sing with laughter, to the mothers who paint with joy, to the mothers who pen a poem, to the mothers who annoy. To the mothers who care for mothers, to the mothers who care for dad, to the mothers who care for others, to the mothers who wish they had. To the mothers with no regrets, to the mothers who have a few, to the mothers with a heart of gold, to the mothers who have two. To the mothers with all the answers, to the mothers without a clue, to the mothers who are dancers, to the mothers who walk with you. To the mothers from every country, to the mothers from every tribe, to the mothers of every color, to the mothers who keep hope alive, to the mothers who stretch the dinner, to the mothers who sacrifice, to the mothers growing thinner, to the mothers without the rice, to the mothers who have plenty, to the mothers who have none, to the mothers who stay at home, to the mothers on the run, to the mothers who must cover, to the mothers without a face, to the mothers we can't see, to the mothers who leave no trace, to the mothers through the ages, to the mothers who were Eve, to the mothers who bore the children, to the mothers who did not conceive, to the mothers with their daughter, to the mothers with their son, to the mothers who are serious, to the mothers who are fun, to the mothers who are sexy, to the mothers who've given up, to the mothers who are ditzy, to the mothers living it up, to the mothers who are in chemo, to the mothers who are in jail, to the mothers who are in rehab, to the mothers who had to bail, to the mothers who lead marches, to the mothers in their lab coats, to the mothers making phone calls, to the mothers getting out votes, to the mothers who are victims, to the mothers who forgive, to the mothers who respect how others need to live, to the mothers crunching numbers, to the mothers who let them slide, to the mothers who meander, to the mothers who guide, to the mothers who worship, to the mothers who pray, to the mothers off oming, to the mothers who stay, to the mothers who like to garden, to the mothers who hammer and nail, to the mothers who crew or pilot, to the mothers setting sail, to the mothers in their labor, to the mothers gave us birth, to the mothers bless the arbor, to the mothers who saved the earth.
Barbara, that was
Thank you.
beautiful. So timely for Mother's Day. Thank you so much. And now over to Bruce Johnson. Bruce, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Dan. Yes, I have a Mother's Day poem also. My mother died in 1995, so it's been a long time, and this is an old poem. And you are not here. It's been years, many days I don't take the time to miss you. Thank you for waiting for my maturity, though I wish I had been a more comforting son in those months when your suffering filled so much of your days, until that last day. I did not cry then and will not now, still holding for you an unexpressed tear. But spring is near, and brighter mornings have fooled me again into venturing out without a coat, and I have caught my March cold, and you are not here to make me toast and tea. Thank you.
Beautiful remembrance there, Bruce. Thank you. Okay, the next set of three will be Maggie Bloomfield, James Horn, and Richard Bronson in that order. So Maggie, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. This is such a moving thing today. Like a little puddled here. The name of this poem is PBS, of course. The young man was clearly pregnant, belly a bowling ball. He made his explanation. The young man was a woman at birth. Some science, some God got confused, for he is certainly a young man with a soft beard and a soft heart, a life he has chosen, and a life in his womb. In a country where freedom, always vulnerable, still reigns, and the young man can live his truth and carry a precious bundle in his belly.
Thank you, Maggie. Very poignant. Okay, James Horn from North Carolina. You got to turn your mic on, James.
Are we good to go there?
You are good to go.
Okay, usual, unusual, and uncouth. Decay in my tooth, unusual and uncouth, about voting booths. When germinated, trouble anticipated should be terminated. When we will evoke, irritate and provoke, fire we will stoke. We will never budge, indulge cause to budge, indulge cause to bulge, so you be the judge.
Thank you, James. Well done. Okay, we'll go over now to Richard Bronson.
I'm going to read a poem by my mom, who passed away during the Sandy pseudo hurricane. My mother's incidentalloma. An incidentalloma is an incidental finding in medicine. I scrawled a silly face on a latex glove blown up to distract you. Smiled as we waited in a cramped exam room. You brought me here, your eyes accused, watching the heavy minutes tick by. Your doctor retired. A new one had ordered this test and that, an ultrasound to confirm his suspicion of gallstones, and there in the right kidney, a spot. No way to know if it's cancer, best to remove it, he'd said. How to live with that on your mind? I suggested a second opinion. The urologist, tall, distant, white coat, his eye at other times, told us your choices, the risks. We sat there in silence, thinking what could not be said. I'll never escape. What should I do? You frowned at me. Say something. You're a doctor. I thought of my father, who had prided himself in his medical judgment, told his patients what to do. He'd have advised you, but I was not him. Mom, a difficult choice. I can't decide for you. All I could muster, seeking my own escape. Neither of us spoke on the drive to your place. I turned the radio on, turned the radio off as a thought echoed through my mind. Could I advise surgery you might not survive? Week after week, I phoned. You said, I've scheduled the pre-op tests, always postponed. You had made a decision to proceed with surgery at some distant date.
Thank you, Richard. Very, very moving. Okay, over to Judy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you all. This is wonderful. I spend a lot of time on Zoom, so eventually this will happen. It's a coincidence that it's a Saturday, almost afternoon, and it's a coincidence that it's also raining. Zoom on a Saturday afternoon. Poetry in person is better than poetry on screen, but this is what we have in a pandemic, and I'm grateful for it. The poet reader has little inflection in his voice, but his metaphors are inspiring. Fierce rain is pelting the window beside me. I chide myself for being distracted and turn back to my PC screen. I scan the gallery of mini portraits and see you upper left. I watch as your head nods down, snaps up like a pneumatic jack, then fades and falls. Your chin rests on your chest. The rise and fall of your labored breath announced your mic left on. Distracted again from the poet reading, I want to reach through the screen and shake you awake, but you snore on. The host, video and mic off, apparently distracted or off on a bathroom break, cannot mute you. I see heads in the gallery twitching left and right, then turn in your direction, surprise, disbelief, smiles registering. The poet drones on unperturbed by your snoring. Nothing to do but lull to the metronome of breaths, loud and sputtering like wind chimes in a storm. I find myself hypnotized, head heavy, eyelids spluttering like butterfly wings. I stir, listen, but all is silent. I blink in the dark, look at a blank screen, and the clock blares the truth. I've been asleep for hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. That should be a required reading of anyone who's ever tried to host a Zoom poetry reading.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Right. Over to Adam Fisher. Adam, you have to turn on your mic. Give him a second.
There we go. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes.
I first want to thank Susan for this wonderful reading, with beginning with the trip from the North Fork to the South Fork, which was terrific, true, and hilarious, and also for her great wisdom in the poems on grief. This is called The Magical Tree. It's probably more appropriate for Father's Day than Mother's Day, but here it goes. When Grandpa arrives, visits his grandson, Jimmy jumps up and down. Quick, Grandpa, let's go bike riding. I want to show you my secret magical place. Please, please, Grandpa. Grandpa follows, recalling that he hasn't ridden a bike in 40 years and doesn't know if he remembers how. He follows his grandson to the garage, where he finds his daughter's bike rusted, tires flat, chain askew. He pumps up the tires, adjusts the chain, and gives it a try. He's wobbly at first, but soon more confident. He follows Jimmy to a path in the woods paved with wood chips. See, Grandpa, I told you, it was a secret, magical place. Just then a couple walks by with a dog. Well, says Jimmy, almost secret, but still magical. Let me show you my favorite tree. They ride farther. The boy stops, lays down his bike, and hugs a giant oak. This is the biggest tree in the forest and has magical powers too. Grandpa gets off the bike and holds hands around the tree with his grandson. You're right. It's magical.
Thank you, Adam. That was wonderful. It's special magic between grandfather and grandson. It was great. Hey. Okay, now over to Nanette. I have two more readers signed up. And again, we'll get to everyone if you haven't signed up yet, but we'll go to Nanette, and then we'll go to Dan, and then we'll go to anyone else who wants to read. Nanette, over to you. Got to turn your mic on. There you go.
Hey, thank you. What a wonderful day. Susan, you're amazing, amazing. I just really loved every single poem. Always do. So I don't have a poem for Mother's Day, but this will have to do. Old Lady Maple. Still wet from their encumbrances, the leaves unfurl in the May evening. At last, Old Lady Maple will receive her spring and summer permanent. Her black bark sags, puffs and sacks at the joints. Her eyelids droop, mouth pruned open. She leans too far to the right, greeting the chattering children. I expected that she'd crack the concrete, unhinge from the earth, and totter down to the corner, leaving me and these silly birds to ponder her enormous wake. But she attends and stands her ground as wide as a wide, tough mother, one I can slip my arms around.
Thank you, Nanette. Well done. I see that I missed one on the list. Glenn, if you don't mind, can I ask you to go next?
Oh, yes. Hi, Susan. Absolutely wonderful reading. So impressed. I just wanted to read a short poem by a friend of mine, Bixley Weisbrod. It's entitled, I Just Wanted to Be Happy. Whereas my mother said, life is not about being happy. And there it was, an impasse as big as a Montana sky.
Short, sweet, but very punchy. Thank you, Glenn. Okay, so wonderful, all these tributes to mothers out there, and there also has been quite a few references to Psalms and scriptures and so forth. So I wasn't quite sure why I chose this to read this, but I guess now I know why. It turns out a lot of the readings are related to these themes of religion and scripture and so forth. So I'm wearing my Southampton College sweatshirt. I graduated from Southampton College and I taught there for many years. And there was an old priest at Southampton College by the name of Bill Gormley. And I wrote this poem in his honor. It's based on a true story. And it's called The Sign of the Cross. And Bill taught at Southampton College for many years. The Sign of the Cross. The old priest read the memo from the college dean, a list of grievances not unlike the ones Martin Luther nailed to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church 600 years ago. A history professor had expressed outrage. A large paper cross hung on the wall of his classroom on Monday morning. Knowing the priest celebrated Mass in the lecture hall on Sunday, he demanded that the priest be punished for his affront to academic norms. The history professor's anger leapt from the pages of his letter to the dean. How can I open young minds when my students are forced to stare at a symbol of oppression? They come to my class to learn, not to revere the evils perpetuated by Christianity throughout history. The slaughter of Muslims during the Crusades, the torture of innocents during the Inquisition, the persecution of Galileo, the forced conversions of the Aztecs and the Mayans, the use of scripture to justify slavery in America. The old priest was reminded that the church was made up of men and that all men sin and make mistakes. Although he had sinned in his many years as a priest, he did not recall personally slaughtering any Muslims, torturing any parishioners, prosecuting any of his students for heresy, or forcing them to attend Sunday Mass. He also remembered the large numbers of priests and nuns standing with Martin Luther King at the Edmund Pettus Bridge on that famous civil rights march to Selma. The old priest thanked the dean for his thoughtful memo and shared some of the things he often found on Sunday morning as he prepared for Mass. A case of beer cans strewn on the floor, marijuana roaches on the table where he set his altar, several used prophylactics, an empty bottle of Jack Daniels, and a drunken faculty member passed out on the floor. The priest thought if Jesus dying in agony on the cross could forgive those that crucified him, the old priest could easily forgive those that desecrated his holy place on Sunday morning. He concluded his response to the dean with a confession and a request. I would ask my learned faculty colleague to forgive me for desecrating his temple of learning and open-mindedness. But alas, I cannot ask forgiveness, for we are without sin in this regard. I believe those who erected that Christian symbol were visitors from a Black Baptist church in Atlanta. Perhaps my learned history faculty colleague should demand an apology from that Black pastor. He might also want to invite that pastor to speak to his history class and explain to his students how ministers wearing crosses standing at the Edmund Pettus Bridge changed history forever. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to change my view to make sure we get everybody. Thank you, everybody. And Kathy and Barbara, let me know. Kathy, did you want to read? We do have time.
Yeah, we do have time. It's pretty remarkable. I would like to say a few things. First of all, Susan, thank you so much. The actress in you certainly comes out. You read like you're on stage. It's fantastic. Brilliant personality. Grief lives inside of us. Be kind to grief. I can't say how much that's true, because, you know, sometimes when I find you're relieved of grief, you realize you've been carrying it for so long, and you weren't even aware of it because it's so deep inside, even if you think it's past. So it's an interesting line in your poem. And I thought that line of getting from the North Fork to the South Fork is the same amount of time as it takes to take a plane to LA. That was hysterical, because it can be a very long ride. Anyway, wonderful reading. Thank you so much. Dan, thank you for hosting as usual. But Barbara, I don't know if this is the last time you'll be our MC or the second to last, but I just want to say thank you for being the MC of this program for the last 2 years. You've just been fabulous. And I hope that you'll stay on, perhaps, if the next poet laureate doesn't want to take your place. That's an invitation. So my poem, I'm going to say something about to Mother's Day, speak to Mother's Day. I wrote a poem a long time ago, and I don't believe that we lose our mothers. I believe we just lose them in the physical. And so this is a poem to my mom, who died at the age of 72 to ALS, of all things, and chose not to go on the vent, so kind of chose to die. And that was a pivotal day for me. So this poem is called Hi, Mom. I took a walk with you today. Do you know? Told you all my problems. Did I bore you? Mentioned some ideas. Do you agree? Told you of my plans. Would you support me? Confided some secrets. Will you keep them? Told you of my triumphs. Are you proud? Told you of my failures. Are you disappointed? Wondered how you might be doing. Are you okay? Would like to know how it works on the other side. Can't you tell me? That's it.
Thank you, Kathy. Very, very moving. Okay, let's bring back Susan for an encore. Susan, if you could, we have time if you want to do just one, or if you want to do two, that's fine as well.
Oh, thank you. This has been a really, really amazing reading. I want to thank everybody that read. It was incredible. It's so amazing when people who you know surprise you with new awesomeness, and people that you don't know are like just a revelation. I'm just going to read one poem. I've never read this at a reading before, but this is the perfect place for this poem. So I'm going for it. This is from a book that you really sort of can't get. It's called The Poetry of Well-Being. And I want to dedicate this the reading of this poem to my dear friends, Nina Yavell and Maggie Bloomfield, who we did this book together. Seems like a million years ago. And so this is for Maggie and Nina with much love. It's called My Jesus. My Jesus does not appear where you don't need him. He frequents churches less than homeless shelters, tearful phone calls. My Jesus does not bring calling cards inscribed with creeds. He loves the heart, the need, the deed no one noticed. I have met him in the wilderness dark night, the splash of shame, the plunge of grief, the friend nearby who brings the gift of empathy. He speaks in voices spared the early grave, the ones he came to save, whether or not they ever take the cup or call him Lord, recite his prayer, capture him in service or in song. He loves as well the ones who don't belong. Thank you. Thank you all.
Beautiful, Susan, just beautiful. Okay. All right. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Barbara for some concluding remarks and announcements about the next reading. So Barbara, over to you. You got to turn your mic on.
You know, after this particular reading, I feel even more speechless than I normally do. There's something about speaking after all these beautiful words have been spoken. And it's as if I will push away all these wonderful words that I want to remember. Susan, your poetry really overwhelmed me, and I believe it overwhelmed a lot of us. Just beautiful poetry. And it was wonderful to hear all of your poems and poems about mothers. It made me miss my mother again and again. You know, it's just wonderful, you know. So that's about all I have to say. I think I'm just completely out of words. I want to make certain that you try very hard to come next month, because Kate Kelly will be here reading her wonderful poems. And also we're going to have that wonderful handover to the new Suffolk County Poet Laureate. And believe me, it has not been easy keeping this secret. So I'll be very happy to do that. And thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful. And Dan, did he disappear?
Here I am. I'm back.
Hey.
So I wanted to thank Barbara. Thanks, Susan, who read so beautifully. Thanks, Kathy, for arranging the poets. And thank to all of you who read and all of you who participated. Just a reminder, I will send out a link of this recording. It was a very special reading. And also all the recordings going back to June are posted on the All Souls website. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop the recording right now.